over the past number of days, I've been doing some serious soul searching. And this is partly because of the celestial dance that is going on and is going to be going on for a substantial part of this month, actually the whole entire month, and probably a little bit longer than that. And this would be the consideration of a YOD, which is not something that one easily wanders into. And as I go through this, it will make a little bit more sense. It's not an aspect that is easily defined. Because the energy quotients that the different planets involved in a YOD are in, they're not exactly on the same wavelength. And so the interpretation capacity to spell out exactly how a YOD will manifest doesn't just leap up to the front and say, this is what I'm about. No, not. Uh, uh, let's go over to the chart, right off the bat, because this is a factor that for those of you that are astrologers, this part will be a little bit more of assistance. The YOD that I'm talking about, this is, by the way, you'll notice this is a chart from Friday the 7th, which was a couple days ago. The YOD that I'm talking about is between here, Pluto and Neptune. They're in the sextile, because a YOD is formed by two planets being in sextile to one another, and a third planet being in quincunx, or in conjunct, to each of those two planets. This is this 150-degree aspect. It forms a kind of a Y pattern. If you joined all the lines here in the center, it would look like a Y. The Mars would come out here to the center, Pluto to the center, Neptune to the center. There you can kind of see a Y shape to it. And if you consider that a chart is, that in any chart, this center point of the chart, that is where each of us stands, at the center of the planetary point of awareness. That's what's being looked at when you're looking at any chart. Now, before I get into the actual things of this next week coming up, which we have a couple of things, planets shifting signs, and that's always an exciting thing. But this particular YOD pattern that is happening with Mars being at 28 degrees, and a YOD basically, I try and keep the aspect orb, which is the distance between a range of degrees, to 3 degrees or less. And sometimes I don't even feel comfortable expanding it beyond 2 degrees in that particular aspect pattern. But this one you can kind of see Pluto and Neptune, they're 60 degrees apart within that 2-degree orb, and easily within the 3-degree orb. And as I was considering this, I was thinking, gee, I was born way back in 1949, and at that time, Pluto was at 15, when on my birthday, Pluto was at 15 degrees of Leo, Neptune was at 15 degrees of Libra, and therefore those two were in that sextile aspect then. I'm thinking, wow, This is a long cycle of and it's because of the perturbations, shall we call it, in the orbit of Pluto and Neptune. They basically, I went through my astrological program and just started going, looking, when do these planets form this sextile? And, looking at it, it's like way back in the early part of the 1940s, all the way up to the 1930s. I've got it on one of my notes here. I have a lot of information that I gleaned all the way up through, about the middle 1930s. This aspect floats in and out. There are sometimes when it's not exactly, it's like there's a window between about 1957 and 1976 where they weren't exactly in that tight a trine to one another, depending on the orb that you wanted to give to it. And then we go from about 1975 through 1987. There is an aspect of things. And here, all the way through the 2020s through the mid 2030s, we have that same sextile aspect. Now, since what we're looking at here is, this is going to be more of an educational process for all of us than what I normally would get into, but in my chart, I have 28 degrees of Aquarius rising. So this 28 degrees, which is where Mars is right now, actually it's from 27 through 20 through the entrance into Virgo, which is going to do this next week. It's in that fulcrum point for the YOD. And what the heck does a YOD mean? Finger of God is one of those terms. But as far as the interpretation process goes for, interpreting a YOD, this is from a book called The YOD Book by Karen Hammaker-Zondag. She writes, "Don't be tempted to describe what you seek." This is how a YOD works. You won't be able to do it. If those around you ask, explain that you simply derive pleasure by being busy with all kinds of things. And part of the reason for that is that what the YOD brings up is, this is another quote out of that same book. "It may sound strange, but we are not really meant to find definite answers. For once they are there, as soon as we receive an answer to a question, we seek further." And that's kind of how the YOD is. It's kind of like that event that happens in an oyster's life where some particle gets into the oyster shell and it starts to build something around it. But as it's building, it keeps changing, keeps getting bigger. Well, a YOD has that capacity as well. And this particular YOD that I'm going to be opening up for our considerations today, we're going to be talking about it more than 1 week of this month, is because if I were to zoom this chart ahead, this Mars, occupying the point of the fulcrum right here of the YOD at 28 degrees of Leo, is going to be moving on into Virgo, like I said, this next week. But Venus is going to be moving ahead, and it's going to occupy this 28 degrees of Leo for uh, a week or two, or close enough to it that essentially for the rest of this month, because Venus is going to station exactly on that 28 degrees. And so that YOD factor is going to be in play for us with a Venusian impetus for this month. Now, in looking up the Pluto sextile Neptune flavor, I have 3 books. First one is an astrologer's handbook by Sequoian and Acker. This is from, I've had this for, I mean, probably almost as long as I've been doing astrology, 50 years or so. Maybe I haven't had it that long. I'm not even sure when it was published. But anyway, I've had it for a long time. And that particular sextile, I'm going to read you. This is an extremely long duration, especially at the present time in history, because of a peculiar timing of the eccentric orb of Pluto with reference to the orbit of Neptune. These 2 planets have been more or less continuously in sextile aspect for at least 30 years, and that's based on a April 73 date that he was using. Therefore, this aspect affects world karma and mass destiny far more than it influences individual matters. And you might say, well, then why are you bothering us with this if it's affecting all of us? It's because we are really all one. So therefore, we should be paying attention to those matters that affect us all. You know, it indicates a tremendous opportunity for spiritual advancement in world civilizations. Now, that seems like it should be significant, at least to some of us. It says, we are fortunate to have this aspect at such a critical juncture of history. The present atomic age can bring about world utopia with prosperity and happiness for the entire human race, or it can mean the nearly total destruction of civilization. Humanity must take the occasion to express universal love, Neptune, with power, and to utilize fully and creatively the awesome Plutonian potentials which science has made available. Our future depends on how many of the human family can constructively respond to the high frequency vibrations of these 2 outermost planets. Another book called Predictive Astrology. I think I've got 3 predictive astrology books. This one is by also Sequoian and Acker. Busy folks. This is also, we're going to look at that aspect between Pluto, that sextile between Pluto and Neptune. Regeneration of the subconscious mind and its motivations characterizes this transit. Opportunities to both develop and study latent, intuitive, and clairvoyant faculties can also arise. This is an excellent period for scientific, occult, meditative, or philosophic pursuits. The individual can benefit in some manner from advancements in science, art, or technology. profound insights can be gained into scientific and occult principles, and an interest in paranormal phenomena, parapsychology, and past lives may develop. There's more. And then, of course, Rob Hand's Bible, Planets in Transit. We wouldn't want to leave Rob Hand's version of this out. This is a period of subtle psychological changes in your life that may have very dramatic consequences or may not be at all obvious to others. It is hard to tell in advance which result is likely to occur. In any case, you are changing inwardly very much, which will be reflected in your changing values. Matters that were once important to you are not any longer. But during this process, you may have to deal with considerable tension because you will feel pressures and compulsions surging inside of you that you have never felt before, which is rather disconcerting. You will find these new desires particularly upsetting if you have always stood in the background and let others get their own way at your expense, denying your own impulse. The changes might be a simple desire for more control over your life, eliminating elements that have bothered you. Or you could have a strong desire to destroy everything. Sounds a little Plutonic, that has ever frustrated you or stood in your way. Most people will not react to this transit by acting destructively, but you are likely to feel some destructive impulses. These are the results of frustrated drives within you that you have never expressed adequately. Energies that you feel but don't express do not merely vanish. They go into a permanent reservoir within you from which they can later re-emerge. This is the time when they will re-emerge. And we're talking about this sextile between, which, has been with us since the 40s and is still with us and will be with us till the middle of the 2030s. These energies may be negatively expressed as subtly destructive or undermining actions either by you alone or with other people. We're talking about something that basically affects large portion of our society if we're paying attention. Even if you have no conscious awareness of these energies, you are unconsciously programming your environment so that events work out in a negative way. You find that people are working powerfully behind the scenes to do you damage. It is probably an inevitable reflection of the negative energy within you. Often, you acquire enemies who try to harm you secretly because your methods leave them no room to oppose you openly. A secret enemy is often someone whom you have frustrated completely, who feels that he or she has nothing to gain by direct confrontation. This is a reflection of those aspects of yourself that you will not confront directly, so the only solution is to confront them. Well, since this is not a new aspect, a lot of us, we were born into this. Almost everybody on my wavelength probably here was born into this particular wave pattern of that sextile between Neptune and Pluto. It's being triggered right now by Mars. And then as we go through the month, Venus is going to step into that position, and Venus is going to hang around there for, a substantial time. I wanted to lay that out for you, and part of the reason that it comes up for me is because I look at this and I'm going, I can put two charts up there, switch them. Now this is my chart in the middle, done in a Koch house pattern. Here's Pluto up here in the going retrograde in the last degree of Capricorn, and Neptune going retrograde in the later degrees of Pisces. Here's our sextile. Here's Mars at the fulcrum point in the middle of it. And the fulcrum point, if you consider 27 to 29, so in that 27 to 28 degrees range, whatever planet is there is going to be at the fulcrum point. And how a YOD works with that fulcrum energy point is there's so many factors. It's like if you actually, let me just paraphrase it in my own words. Pluto is in Capricorn, which is a cardinal sign, and it's also a negative sign. Neptune is in a negative sign as well, and the positive signs are the air and fire signs. Negative signs are the earth and water signs. Believe it or not, I wouldn't make this stuff up. But here we have an earth negative sign and a water negative sign, and the planet at the fulcrum is a fire positive sign, and Aries, ruler of a fire sign. This dynamism of these different energies, and this is a fixed sign, by the way, too, Leo, fixed sign. You can kind of see that there are, if you combine the different energies, there are 8 different energy patterns that they represent. And so trying to facilitate some level of cohesion between them is not necessarily going to transpire. This is why one of the versions that I've heard of YOD many years ago was that there's an energy vibration in play that is seeking to find some kind of resolution, but like what I read out of the YOD book, if you do find that resolution, it's really only a step along the way, because there's something else that puts in an appearance once you find that resolution that says, oh, there's further that I need to go. And so this is how a YOD works. And right now we have this Mars energy in Leo, kind of a driving impulse to express out there, really Leonian, ruled by the sun. And always, whenever any planet is involved in any kind of consideration, you have to go, well, what about the houses of the signs that particular planet rules? And it rules Scorpio. Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio. And Aries, which is, that's the one everybody recognizes. Oh yeah, Mars is definitely an Aries thing. I'm going to switch the charts around here a bit. Go back to our one that we're working with. Don't need my chart. We will get into it, because I don't have a choice. It's across my horizontal axis of my chart. It's saying, Jeff, pay attention to this. There's something going on that, it may be trying to rattle your cage in some fashion. Don't get too upset by that. Anyway, so this Mars energy, you know, in that Leo thing, there's a just driving impulse to put it out there. Be solar. And, it has this eighth first house flavor because of the Scorpio Aries archetypal energy that come into play. Self, first house, wants to express, it wants to experience life, it wants to get into an adventure of some kind. Eighth house, what mysteries might be sitting there just about to be discovered? That's Mars at work, and it's in Leo. Is it going to want to express it out there? You betcha. And so if you consider the, potential energetic harmonious tension, I'm going to call that harmonious tension between Pluto and Neptune up here in that sextile. That Mars energy is, and it's the positive one, might be trying to facilitate a plutonic death cycle of experience. Something needs to die in order for something to be reborn. That reminds me, I ran into something else when I was reading. I don't remember where it was. Anyway. And, Neptune, our capacity to invent, to dream up things, to really tap into a level of energy that has no limits. And in order to facilitate that kind of birthing process, the plutonic factor steps in and says, well, if you want to go there, there are probably aspects of your makeup that need to pass away in order to provide room for that particular kind of soul growth to transpire. And Mars had driving energies down there saying, go for it. Don't hold back. It's going to be challenging, but, if you don't, you won't grow. And I'm having it right on my horizontal ascendant descendant line of my chart. I've been dealing with this for the past week and a half, just kind of going, how do I basically want to play with this? Because it's an energy signature that is not minor for me particularly. And I'm just inviting you kind of along on the sled ride as we do the celestial journey. Anyway, let's look at this week that's coming. On Monday, the YOD is still in effect. 0 degrees is, it's kind of like, it's shifted out of that Leonian sign. But there's another planet slipping in there. Anyway, on Monday the 10th, you can see Mars has just shifted into Virgo. That's a game changer. Mars is, it's a driving energy. It lands in the sign of Virgo that says, okay, let's apply some energy to this whole aspect of getting ourselves organized. Virgo, being organized at not necessarily the overt physical level. It can happen internally that we are, or putting thoughts together in particular fashion that is beneficial to us. And that Mars landing in Virgo is saying, have you thought of all those details? Every detail that needs to be thought of in order to make sure that, if in this organizational process you leave something out, Is it going to affect the whole equation? Well, of course it is. So that focus on the details of what is the most appropriate kind of way to play this kind of energy is right now it has a fire burning underneath it. I don't know if you can feel that energy, but that's Mars. It's saying, you can feel here's a cauldron. Picture a cauldron, and within it there's all kinds of opportunities, versions of reality floating and bubbling around in there, and that Mars is kicking up the heat to make sure that it bubbles more vigorously so that the little pops of bubbles exploding at the surface are giving you opportunities to make sure that you are paying attention. Is this relevant? Is that relevant? Do they combine? And if they combine, where is that going to take me? This is an adventure that we're getting into. And that Mars energy is like, yeah, okay. The next day, we have another shift. Mercury, which had been cruising along here in Cancer, making our thought processes and communications focused in on home and family and what is the appropriate way to engage with our family members in an effective enough way that we don't disrupt the home, but the conversations that could erupt from that mercurial thing, is you or are you willing to allow the trickster to come into play? Because Mercury, the trickster, is always there. Or are you, organized enough, that's that Virgo side of the thing, to, even though you may see something, saying something about it may not be the most appropriate. Anyway, we have a shift of energy. That Mercury leaves that Cancerian sensate quality of being able to feel like, well, we're still in the Cancer mode because that's where the sun is. So that's not entirely leaving us, but this mercurial shift into Leo is like, boom, the mouth opens. Something wants to erupt from it to tickle the fancies of those within earshot. Is there a moment where I can be on stage and explain the realities of life in such a way that it grabs your attention? This is Mercury in Leo at work, trying to stimulate your thinking processes to see what is it, where is it that we want to go, what energy are you feeling inclined to be a part of? And do you know that you really are a part of it? Yeah, we're a part of everything. As a soul being, we are connected to all of reality. So this Mercury going into Leo, you might sense that people become maybe just a little bit more verbose than normal. What is it that they are saying? Is it relevant to what it is that I sense I need to be paying attention to? Not always the case. But if so, have I practiced my listening skills to the point where I'm an efficient listener? That doesn't necessarily mean I'm always going to listen. I got to know when to say I'm turning down the volume, because I've heard that before, and I know where that's going to lead me, and therefore I need to pay attention elsewhere. Always an option. There are a lot of shows that are always in play. And by the way, Leo is that experience of play. It is going to plays. It is theater on a grand scale. And we're only on Tuesday of next week. If we plug ahead a few more days, actually it's 7 more days, what we're going to see is that Mercury clips along, closest planet to the sun, so it's it's on a tear. It's ripping 2, 4, 6. You kind of see those degrees just adding right up. And oh, by the way, this is Friday. You can kind of already see that Venus has stepped into this YOD position already. And I'm not going to talk about Venus this week. I will talk about it next week because it's going to be more substantial, because next week Venus is actually going to station and go retrograde right on that 28 degrees of Leo. Same degree that Mars, tuned into that YOD position. And it's going to be there for the whole rest of the month. But back to our Mercury dance. So we go on Sunday, end of the week. Mercury's at 10:16, but it's moving, a degree and a half, 2 degrees a day. Let's see, how fast is it moving? It's traveling. Mercury is traveling at a degree and a half, 1 degree 47 minutes of travel a day. So almost 2 degrees a day. So that means that it is forming a nice little square over here to Jupiter. Jupiter. What does it mean to get big? What does it mean to, express something that doesn't necessarily have limitation holding it back? That's essential Jupiter at work. And this square between what it is we think and what it is we say to that Jupiter reality, trying to, in some sense, make sure while it's in Taurus that we stay grounded. I've got to take that with tongue-in-cheek, kind of. Jupiter staying grounded, ruler of Sagittarius, I would say not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. I mean, anything Jupiter touches, it wants to expand and grow in some fashion. But, how can we take this square tension energy between what it is that we want to, project out there with our speech, and bring in that Jupiterian version that says, don't think small, don't hold back. And yet at the same time, this is Taurus. This is our connection to this Mother Earth planet that we live in. Saying, if you're going to speak and be able to do it in a fashion that has, even as I'm thinking, containment, I'm kind of like, well, Jupiter and containment aren't exactly two terms that I would feel overtly comfortable putting in the same sentence. And yet here I have to, in some fashion, make us aware of the fact that there is, appropriate expression of our connection to this planet that we live on. There's our Jupiter in Taurus, that if we speak about it, it would be good to be cautious to make sure that the audience is receptive. And the sun is still in Cancer. Remember that. None of these things in the chart are happening independently. And the Cancer experience says, I want to feel the essence of what is going on around me. Can your heart open up enough to sense that? This is at work here. So that Mercury-Jupiter equation, with its tenseness, wants you to still be appropriate. And those are the planetary expressions that I'm going to cover this particular week. There will be more next week. Next week, we have a lot of stuff happening, and we're on a month-long adventure right now that the YOD at the global level is asking us to consider This week and last week, it was how does our Mars energy functionally play with that sextile between Pluto and Neptune in a way that energetically inspires us to allow things to pass away so that our imagination can invent something new and have a place for it to grow within us. As this week ends, Venus is stepping into that equation. How is the experience of that Pluto Neptune sextile going to affect our values and our relationships? Venusian terms. Something to ponder. This is something that, for me specifically, rests on that horizontal axis of my chart. Self and other is in play. I'll get back to you on that next week. For now, I'm just going to sign it off. This image behind me, this is a tree in the winter in Norway. And you can kind of see, picture if you will, that astrological chart we're looking at. All those planets, these are like energetic, you can see all these little branches, like energetic lines of that celestial energy, all focusing back into that core central reality, the trunk. Picture it as maybe the tree of life. Hey, it is a tree after all. Always at work. All these energies coming together, and I'm doing my best from my perspective to give you the chance to find your part to play in this life dance, soul dance, celestial dance, all happening simultaneously. Welcome, and we'll see you all next week. Ciao.